Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Power Forward podcast. I'm your host, Jackie Rainica, a mindset coach and former Ivy League athlete here to help student athletes, parents, and coaches focus on progress, not perfection. Every other week, we'll welcome a new guest with relevant experience to share their perspectives and tools to support growth on and off the field. There's no version of Power Forward coming to life without my next guest. Jess Deutsch is the definition of a hype woman, and I'm grateful for every text, call, and conversation we've shared along the way. Jess is a licensed social worker who focuses her work on advising and mentoring high school and college students, athletes, and young professionals. She also consults with nonprofits in higher education, social impact, high performance athletics, and well being. She's passionate about helping others attain big goals with health and perspective, and has done so both at her alma mater, Princeton University, and in private practice. With elite athletes, pre-med students, or high achievers in general, she helps young people discover their own motivations and define success on their own terms. Jess has built an incredibly impactful and fulfilling career, and I'm sure she would say her greatest pride and joy are her two grown children, as well as the many young people she once helped and now cheers for all over the world. Today's conversation is a special one. Jess recently lost her father 2 years after losing her younger brother. And rather than shy away from these huge losses, she wanted to show up and talk about them. Jess knows that I also have walked the path of losing someone I love. We'll talk about grief in its rawest form today. And we'll also talk about the grief that often goes unspoken: a career-ending injury, stepping away from a sport, or closing a chapter you didn't choose to close. These are losses too, and we think they deserve the same honesty and care. Jess, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and doing this, and I'm grateful for every conversation too.
Oh, you're the best. Can you tell us about your upbringing, the people who shaped you the most, and how that foundation influenced the way you hold space so graciously for others?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm so glad that you start these conversations that way because I do think that the way we begin shapes where we go. And for me, that's certainly true. So I was the middle of three kids growing up in small town Warren, New Jersey, where my dad was the doctor who took care of pretty much everyone I knew. My mom was a photographer and a homemaker. And in terms of the way that it has influenced me, I would say it's really the values that I learned in my family, which were that family came first above everything else, then that education and hard work, accomplishment were really important. But before those things, also kindness and listening, speaking softly and listening really hard are the kind of the drivers of the way I try to live and work.
Again, I'm so sorry about the loss of your father. I know you're still in the thick of it and probably will be forever. And I'm so grateful you're willing to be here and be open about it. But can you share a little more about what this grief experience has been like for you?
For me, it's been grief on top of grief, two very different losses. My brother battled cancer on and off for 30 years. So I lived most of my adult life knowing that I would lose him. That didn't make it any easier when I did. My father considered himself to be the luckiest guy. He lived to 93, was kind of the last man standing amongst his friends. And he felt so grateful for every day. I know that. In the end, it was 11 days between falling and when he passed away. And so even though it was after such a long and good life, it also felt kind of sudden. So I think that every loss is different. What is true, I think, of every grief experience is that it is extremely unpredictable. So I don't know day to day what kind of day it's going to be right now. Sometimes I feel like I don't know where I am or I've lost my reference points because these were such critical and painful losses. And I would say at this stage of life, in addition to having my own feelings, I am also a mom and a daughter and a sister and an aunt. And so I have to do the thing that matters the most for the people who matter the most to me while having my own feelings to cope with. Our preference in our culture, and especially in high performance kinds of communities, I think the preference is to talk about wins more than losses. I know loss has driven you too to be where you are in this work. I wonder what that's been like for you.
Thank you for asking and thank you for sharing. It can be really unpredictable, and I know you're showing up for the people around you, but I also hope they're showing up for you. And I think I know they are. I'm glad you can lean on them too. I've seen this with my mom and dad too because they've lost parents. It's okay to show that you're sad and
Mhm.
show that you miss them. And I think that's important that
It's
I
real.
kind of grew up seeing that. I know it's hard, but I'm sure your kids and your family are grateful to have you. But to your point, I mean, I did win a lot growing up. I had awesome parents and a brother to look up to. My sports teams did well. I had a lot of great friends. I loved school. I did decently in it. I go to Princeton for basketball. And of course, there's some loss along the way, an off game or a test that I hadn't prepared for. But when you're not prepared for loss, it hits you like a ton of bricks. I got to Princeton and it was a shock to the system because I wasn't totally prepared with tools to help me get through the day to day. And then I got a concussion and I was injured and I lost my best friend to suicide, and I lost another high school friend to suicide. Through all of that, though, my team was still winning, and I was kind of expected, and maybe not, but it's what I kind of put on myself to just keep up and to keep going and to push through the challenges. No one really knew what to do with me, I don't think. I had all my support systems, but it was new territory for everyone. My parents didn't know how to handle losing their daughter's best friend to suicide. Like, we were all going through this, and like same with my coaches and my teammates. It was shocking for everyone. That's why I ended up studying psychology and got particularly interested in student athlete mental health. And finally, I'm doing work now that feels completely aligned with my passion to help prepare and guide student athletes through all the wins and the losses. But it's hard. It's hard, and we can't do it alone. It's impossible. What do you think has taught you or shown you that you maybe didn't fully understand before?
It's taught me that I can be really strong when I need to be, but that being honest is just as important as being strong. And sometimes I don't feel that strong in the face of what I've lost. And instead of running away from that's a point of connection if we let it be. So it's like why we can have this conversation, right? Because we've both acknowledged that in addition to all the things that are joyous and lucky and happy and all that, that the losses coincide and coexist. And there are some silver linings. Sometimes I also feel like I've come to recognize that my brother isn't suffering anymore, that my dad's life is now something we've been able to honor. It doesn't make me feel less sad or lonely or missing him on a day-to-day basis, but it feels like we can translate these losses into something that honors and respects what we had. How about you?
It's shaped my life and given me perspective and helped me understand who I am and who I want to be, and has given me my life's purpose. It's really sad that something so terrible has to happen in order for that to work out sometimes.
Mhm.
I think you've told me this before that like you planted a tree or anytime and it's been a lot recently. Anytime I see a ladybug, and I have
Mhm.
a little ladybug bracelet now. And this is actually from one of my other childhood friends' moms. But anytime I see a ladybug, I think it's someone I've lost, just kind of winking at me or being there
Mhm.
in a tough time. And if you look for different signs, and everyone has their own thing, but there are ways to find comfort and to know that they're still with us. At least that's what I believe.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. As someone who, your whole life you have supported others through their hard times or their challenges, what has it been like to be the one who needs the support?
Yeah, it's uncomfortable for me. It's unfamiliar, and it makes me relate a lot to students at Princeton used to tell me sometimes when they came to my office that they were really bad at asking for help. We would together try to reframe that as you're just not used to it. You haven't done it very much. New experiences are hard. I'd much rather be the one who's providing comfort than needing it. But at the same time, I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have learned some things that I need for myself. I need sometimes to be alone. I need quiet. I need to not be in a big crowd. And allowing myself that gives me the fuel that I need to be able to do what I am more comfortable doing sometimes. So I think that it's given me, I guess, empathy for what it's like to be in the sort of vulnerable role. It's a two-way street, you know?
It can be really hard to say or tell someone that you need help, especially when we're younger and there's pressure. It might be portrayed, or we think it's portrayed as a weakness, but I think it's one of the strongest things you could do is ask for help. And I wish I did more of that in college.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't really know how. I didn't know what I needed.
Mhm.
I remember going to a few friends and just saying, I don't know what's going on. I just need you to be here with me.
Yep. And you have to know who are the people who you can do that
Yes.
with. It isn't everybody.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
And that's like part of building your toolkit is figuring out who's on that list of people and knowing you can go to them in any situation. What would you say you want people to know about grief that people don't generally talk about?
One of the things I think I wish people knew is someone told me this about physical pain once when I was injured, that when the pain is the worst, you need to remind yourself that it's not going to stay like that forever. And then you can recognize kind of the wave and ride it out. And there's a lot of comfort in knowing that, again, with grief, it's unpredictable. So you don't know when it's going to hit you in a way that makes you feel like you can't move. But if you remember that it won't stay like that, then you can get through it. I think there's a lot of comfort in knowing that fact, because it's easy to get like frozen and feel like this is never going to change. And it does change. Grief is not something you can fix or that you need to fix even. It needs to be there. You do have to find ways to endure it and ways to express what you're feeling, but nobody can fix it. And people with very good intentions, people want to try, but that's not going to happen. I've been thinking lately about this song, which I don't know if anyone in your generation would have heard, Free to Be You and Me, that was really popular when I was little. And there was a song that my brother and I really loved, and it was this football player, Rosie Greer. He sang this song called It's All Right to Cry. I think everyone should hear that song. Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. This is true for me, and I think probably for a lot of people, that work can be a crutch that you use to try to like avoid the hardest stuff. And I mean, sometimes that's okay, but I think also when you're kind of falling into that, it's good to like at least in some places choose rest or choose something else besides work, because otherwise you're avoiding what might just need to be there.
I think I would keep busy or like do things so I wouldn't be alone in
Hmm.
my thoughts, sometimes scary thoughts.
Hmm.
What would you say to that?
I think sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's necessary, but not all the time.
Yeah. And I'm not a therapist or licensed social worker, but knowing again that you have that toolkit when you feel, like you said, paralyzed or
Hmm.
those thoughts are coming and that, you can turn to it and think, okay, I can do XYZ
Hmm.
to make myself feel a little bit out of this rut.
Yeah. So it's like a dance that you're doing of sometimes you might not feel like you have the capacity to like dive into it
Mhm.
or sit with it. And so you do what works. And then it might be totally different tomorrow. But if you're stringing together days where you're not talking to anybody or not moving, you're not feeling like you're functioning in the world, then I think it's really important to either have someone who's going to call you on it or just continue to develop the self-awareness to know, okay, I'm going down a path where I'm not coping. I'm not
Mhm.
being my full self in a healthy way. And that's where the toolkit and the maybe small group of people who you can trust to say, here's what's going on,
Mhm.
or can we just sit together and not say anything? But at least you're making a connection and not totally isolating. It's a balance,
I would say too, like seeking professional help,
of
which
course.
I think can be scary too. And also, in my experience, at least, like it took me until last year, 2 years ago, to find a therapist that I fully clicked with who changed my life like crazy. Like, yes,
Mhm.
I had other therapists who helped me through those particular times, but you're not always going to click with the first one. And that can be really frustrating, but don't give up. I really loved group therapy. And I think, especially through grief and loss, that can be really helpful to connect to others. And it was helping me because I felt like I was helping others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there are
You
options,
found
you
what
know?
works for you.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
I know we talked about losing someone you love and how incredibly hard that is. And not that it's by any means the same, but there are similar feelings and there is grief that goes along with a big injury or, I mean, even a small injury where you're out for a week
Mm-hmm.
or losing a game or being done with sports, like
Mm-hmm.
having to transition from sports to the real world. I don't think that gets talked about enough. At least when I was going through injury, it was a lot of assumptions that I to go back to basketball full force. There's a fine line between my concussion symptoms and my depression symptoms, and I was questioning if I wanted to go back to sport. I don't know if you have thoughts on that type of grief or mindset we go through as we're going through these life transitions that rings true for you.
Yeah, I think the common thread is whatever the loss is that we're talking about, it is very much tied to your identity.
Mm,
So my whole life, I didn't know myself as other than my brother's sister, my dad's
mm,
daughter. Right? That is who I am. And I literally had no experience in the world of not being those things.
mm,
And I think there is a commonality of you were a basketball player. Who would you be if you weren't a basketball player? And the fact is, there are a million possible answers to that question. But in the moment where suddenly, whatever it's going to be something other than how you've always known yourself, it's scary and it's
mm,
disorienting. It means giving yourself the time you need to not know the answer to that question of who you're going to be. And while that is unsettling, you will get there. You might not get it the first day out of not going to practice. And so that day, I do think that's huge, huge kind of loss. And I do think the link is that it's about how you see yourself and how you know yourself. And the only way to figure that out is to give yourself the grace and time to let it emerge. And it's not something that happens right away.
mm.
Uncertainty is hard and scary and necessary.
Two, it's this oddly lonely feeling because even though you can relate to others who, if I tore my ACL, maybe my teammate tore my ACL, but you have different bodies and you're on different paths, or your role on the team might be
Mhm.
different. You lost your dad, maybe someone else lost their dad, but it's not the same totally.
Mhm.
So it's like, yes, we can relate to others, but the experience you're feeling is very specific to you. So it can be even scarier because there is no blueprint. I'm the type of person who is like, someone give me the answers. Someone tell me what to do. I think because my whole life, that's what
Yeah,
it was like. I had it all mapped out. And then all of a sudden, you have to figure these things out on your own.
yeah. I also think that there is a tendency to worry what will everybody else think? And the fact is, everybody else isn't going to think about it as much as you are. If what you need is to not do that thing anymore, or you need time to heal, you could build it up in your mind in some way that like you're letting everybody down. But actually, once you kind of put that in the world, like I need to do that, I need to take some time, or I don't want to play, I'm ready to be done.
Hmm.
I think it would be very, very unusual for the people who love you not to support whatever it is that you need to do in order to go forward. Power forward. Power forward, but in a way that you take care of yourself.
Yeah. Power forward doesn't necessarily mean like pushing through and not listening to what's coming in. It's showing up every day, one step at a time. And
Yeah.
the only way we can go is forward. So might as well do it with power.
Yeah, and actually, this reminds me, I think I've told you this before, that my father ended whatever interaction you had with him by saying straight ahead. Everybody else except for me loved when he said that. Life is not a straight path, right? You need to kind of go over here a little bit and take a turn over here. Eventually, what I came to is that you can actually continue forward, move straight ahead, and also have it not be a perfectly linear path. Like both things can be true. And so, yes, power forward, because it's just like how you think about it, though. Power doesn't mean ignoring things or pushing beyond the point of pain. And gathering strength is just a more complicated thing than a straight path.
Put it so well. I'm going to use that. Thanks. No, I think that's a great way to tie everything together. And I'm sure you've been doing a lot of reflection on the things and the lessons that your dad has taught you along the way. And I'm so glad you have so many incredible memories with him. Where can listeners find you?
Yeah, so hopefully they find me less and less online. I'm really trying to stay off of the things that are distractions, but I will give you my Instagram and my LinkedIn. And I'm trying to write more on Substack, kind of the intersection of professional and personal. And so some of that will be related to loss, because it is part of my personal and it's part of everything I do. Writing is my chosen form of expression. Anderson Cooper's been doing this podcast called All There Is, focused on grief, and it's really powerful, the stories that people have shared with him and his own reflection.
I second that.
I have also been following this Instagram account that's called Daily Buddhist.
Okay.
Mostly it's sort of inspirational
Love
sort
it.
of posts. I reshare them for myself and for anybody else.
What are you
And
up to
power
now?
forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I told you, my biggest cheerleader. And what are you up to now? What are you excited about?
I'm working on a lot of the same things that I've been doing for a long time. So I still love advising high school students on their way to college and working with college students on their applications to medical school. And then more recently, I'm also kind of growing my practice in some new directions. So I am doing mindfulness work with young athletes. So shout out to Unlimited Tennis Academy. I know you and I have been working with some of the same tennis players there. And I'm also doing the training to become certified as a grief coach. So sort of formalizing the kinds of things that we've been talking about today. And I guess I'm most excited about how this all fits together and how I can build my own experiences of loss into the work that I do to help other people move forward in whatever the losses are that they're experiencing. I guess, it makes me think about the idea of revising the youth development culture, youth sports development culture, that where everybody gets a trophy. I think we need to go further than that. Not only does everybody not get a trophy, but everybody needs to learn how to lose and get back on their feet and get back in the game. So I think that's kind of what I'm doing. And maybe this conversation is part of that.
And then I'm about to take a big trip with my husband. We will be going to Hawaii, which has been on my bucket list forever, and then Japan.
I'm so jealous.
It's good to have something to look forward to in hard times.
Looking forward to reading your Substacks about that. I think Japan will be a nice, tranquil place to be.
Yeah, I think I'm going to spend a lot of time drinking matcha and reflecting
That sounds lovely.
and getting ready for my 35th college reunion. That happens when we get back, so.
Oh my gosh, so much to look forward to.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Jess. I really appreciate it. I know this is not easy, and I hope that you can find some comfort in knowing that I am on your team and always here to talk, and so many others as well. And I think this will be really helpful for a lot of people. So
I hope so.
I appreciate your bravery and honesty.
Thank you, Jackie, because I feel like being in this conversation is a way that I can honor the memory of my brother and my dad, and I'm grateful for that. And I'm also really proud of the way you have turned your experience of loss into something so powerful. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love you.
You too.